Hi friends. So, um, I think that this episode of Sailor Moon Crystal is the best one yet. And I'm going to talk about why. So, it starts out with Mistress 9 talking to Pharaoh 90, and they're talking about the legendary silver crystal and how super powerful it is, and blah blah blah. And then it goes into Hotaru's head, and she's fighting against Mistress 9's control over her and stuff. And while we're in there, there's a sound effect that kind of sounds like Dialga's in-game cry, which is kind of interesting. That's not why I think this is the best episode yet, though, so don't worry about that. It's a little more in-depth than that. So then later, there's a scene where Hotaru's soul is talking to Chibiusa's soul, and if you're into lolly lesbian implications, you will like that part a lot, because Chibiusa is basically laying her head in Hotaru's lap while Hotaru strokes her head and assures her that everything is going to be alright, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. And why is my hair freaking out? I swear to God, it does this, like, it'll be fine, and then I just go to record and suddenly it's a mess. I don't know. Anyway, so here's where we get into the good stuff. It shows backstory on how Professor Tomoe and, hang on, I have to look at her name again, Kaori, I don't know why I can't remember that. Basically, it's the story about how they became evil. Master Pharaoh 90 appeared on Earth shortly shortly after the accident where Hotaru was injured, and Professor Tomoe was going to start performing surgery to, like, rebuild her body and stuff. And then suddenly alien invasion, and he just sends a little egg thingy to take over Kaori's body, and he's like, oh yeah, you serve me now. You don't get a choice if you try to resist extreme pain. Okay, thanks, bye. And yeah, so they didn't really have much of a choice but to become evil, because they were basically force-fed these egg thingies that put another personality into them or something. So yeah, that backstory gives you a little more sympathy toward those characters, at least in my opinion. Maybe you still hate them, but I certainly have a little more sympathy toward them, since they didn't really have much of a choice but to become evil. So yeah. And then it's like cutting to a monologue of Professor Tomoe. Basically, he's letting his hubris consume him. He thinks that he's become a god because he's making these human-alien hybrid creatures, which are the Daimon. I'm not sure why a lot of them look like these weird skull flesh monster thingies, and yet he said that he made the Witches 5, basically. Like, how are you going to make 4 beautiful girls and then suddenly, like, these blob monsters? Shouldn't each creation be getting better, not worse? Unless he considers it better. I know he has problems, but I didn't think, they were that kind. Anyway, so, yeah. I kind of liked that he started out being forced to be evil, but then he was, like, starting to like it because he could play God and stuff. I also think the idea of human-alien hybrids is really cool. Um, I know that's been done in other science fiction media, but, it's not something you normally expect to see in a Magical Girl series. They're usually pretty grounded in Earth reality, but with, magic, of course. Um, but Sailor Moon was always kind of not only a Magical Girl series, but also a bit of a space opera kind of thing. So, yeah, you really see that the sci-fi influences in this episode. Also, the Senshi split up. For some reason, the inner Senshi thought it would be a good idea for Sailor Moon to go with the outer Senshi, even though they're all best friends, so you would think that they would want her to go with them, but whatever. So the building is really, really large, because I think they start out on floor 56, and then they're heading down to the basement. And what building is that big? I'm kind of wondering, how long did that elevator ride take to go from that floor all the way down to the basement? That must have been like really, really awkward to ride in the elevator for that long, because I know they were like in silence for most of that ride until they start talking about being afraid of being alone, basically. And the outer Senshi were like, oh yeah, we were alone for most of our existence, but the way we dealt with it was that we focused on what was important and focused on that light and positivity, and that helped us never to give up. And I think that's really cool. But there's something that kind of expands on that shows up right after it, but I'm not going to talk about that until the end of this video log, because I think it's really important, so I want to save it for the last thing we talk about. Anyway, I know that's not something I normally do, but hear me out. Where was I? Sorry, I have like these notes that I take during the episode and I kind of lost my place. Ah, yes. So when they get down to the basement, basically Professor Tomoe is interacting with them, basically monologuing and having crazy laughs. Now, I think the animation on him in this scene is really, really good. Particularly with the maniacal laugh, just the way he kind of bends and stretches, which is really cool. And then when he's monologuing about something, it's not really the animation, but because he's not moving during this except for his mouth, but the way they drew, like, he's kind of, okay, he's on like this side of the screen and he's like really hunched down, but then his hands are toward the front and they're drawn really, really big, and just the angle that they did that was really cool in my opinion. So yeah, good job on that scene, guys. Good job. And the scene was made even better because I don't think Professor Tomoe ever transformed into an alien being in the 90s series, because I'm pretty sure, spoiler, at the end of season 3, that Hotaru is returned to her father. So, I think he stays human throughout the entirety of season 3 in the 90s series. However, here, he does transform into his alien life form self thing. And it kind of just looks like a buff human, which I guess you could kind of argue that Piccolo from DBZ looks like a buff human with pointy ears and antenna. So, yeah. Well, it doesn't exactly look like a buff human because it's purple and has kind of like spikies, but I guess in the 90s they thought aliens looked a lot like us, but buffer. I don't know. Um, anyway, lame joke. Um, so yeah, he turned into an alien, and I'm glad that he transformed in this series because it is a nice reveal, and it led to a pretty cool action sequence. I think Sailor Moon did a lot of flips that she doesn't normally do. So I guess she's been practicing her gymnastics, and also since he transformed, Sailor Moon had to kill him because he wasn't gonna transform back into the professor, so he's evil, you gotta get rid of him. And she was like feeling bad because, you know, that's Hotaru's dad, and that's sad. And yeah, but I kind of like that because it adds more weight to Hotaru's character because she has to lose her father. So that's one less thing for her to really fight for, but she still fights evil anyway. So I like that. I mean, she could hold a grudge against Sailor Moon for killing her father, but she doesn't. She still recognizes what the greater good is. So yeah, good job. I love Hotaru's character, but you all already knew that if you've been watching all of the other video logs I've been doing on this series. Yeah. Anyway, so after that, there's like this random pillar of darkness light, I guess shadow light, you could say, that comes up from the basement and hurts all of the inner senshi who were up on one of the upper floors. The outer senshi and Sailor Moon were able to avoid it because Sailor Pluto puts like this force field around them and like levitates them upwards. But the inner senshi are all hurt, and Sailor Moon's brooch reacts, or compact she calls it, but it's still a brooch because you can still like attach it. It's just multifunctional, I guess, which is kind of revolutionary because I don't think they had anything like that in the 90s. I don't even think they have anything like that now. Is there such a thing as a compact that is also a brooch and you can just hook it on your clothes and take it off and check your makeup whenever you want? Like, that would be awesome. I would feel like a magical girl with something like that. That's like, holy crap. But anyway, girly things. Yeah. So the sad news is that because the inner senshi are hurt, Sailor Moon has basically lost her super form because how she achieved it was that like all of the wills of all of the senshi, I suppose, gave her this power, and because some of them are hurt, she is unable to become this form, which is bad because she has to fight the main bad guy soon, and she can't power up. So, crap. I'm really hoping, really, really hoping that they will do a Sailor Moon Crystal version of that scene in the 90s series where Sailor Moon is just desperately crying crisis makeup over and over, and she becomes increasingly more desperate, and she like slams her fist on the ground, and she just, oh, that scene makes me cry every time. It just shows how much talent that voice actress has to be able to convey such a wide range of emotions from like it's really hard to explain, but it starts out kind of like she wants to help, but she realizes that it's not working, and so she becomes desperate, and then she becomes angry, and then she feels despair, and then she just has no energy left. But at that point that she has no energy left, she's able to do it, and she's able to transform, and in doing so, she exerts herself so much that her pure heart comes out of her body, and basically, like, that's her soul, and her eyes just kind of glaze over, and so she's going into the fight subconsciously because her spirit's so strong that she just knows that that's what she has to do. She has to save the world, and oh my god, it's so great. I really hope that they do that scene again in Sailor Moon Crystal animation, because fuck, that's such a great scene. It's probably one of my favorite scenes in all of anime. It's that good. Really, like, up there, up with that freaking fight in Rurouni Kenshin where it just, the whole room is like shaded blue except for the eyes of Kenshin and is it Saito? No. Is it Saito? I don't remember. Crap. The guy from the Shinsengumi. You know who I'm talking about. That fight where he almost reverts back to himself during the war. That's a great anime scene too. I should like compile a list of really great scenes from anime, but that could take a while because there are a lot of great scenes in anime and there's no way I could like rank them from 10 to 1. I'm adding more projects onto myself like I always do. I always do like 10 projects at once. But anyway, so now that you heard me nerd out about anime scenes and how great they are, see the differences. Here I go again. With the Sailor Moon scene I described, what makes that scene great is is the performance of the voice actress. With the scene in Rurouni Kenshin, they don't really talk. It's the minor characters who talk. They're just like saying, stop, stop. So that scene is great because all of the conflict is conveyed through the animation. So I'm not saying that the scene in the 90s Sailor Moon has bad animation, because it's really good. It's just, like, she doesn't really move much during that scene. She kind of stands in, well, she's on her hands and knees because she's really, really hurt in one spot, and she's yelling out crisis makeup over and over. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting how, I don't know, my opinions are weird. I don't see one medium above the other. I think both the animation and the voice acting both play a really key role in making anime great, as well as the story, because you can have good animation, but if you have a really bad story, that ruins it for me. It's just like, I don't know, it's really hard to do everything perfectly in an anime, so I usually like excuse a little bit, but the ones that get it right, they really get it right. But anyway, I've rambled on enough about that. So let me get to that important thing that I said I was going to talk about. So when they were on the elevator talking about like being alone and how they focus on the positives and that helps them keep going, blah blah blah. I'm not quite sure what happens, but they're like suddenly enveloped by blackness, and Sailor Moon finds herself alone, and of course that frightens her because she was just saying a second ago that she fears being alone, blah blah blah. But because they told her about how like they focused on the light and all that stuff, they were able to make it through. Well, she basically remembers that, and she's like, yeah, that's right. I carry a light within myself too. And I think that's really important because that's what Sailor Moon is all about. You see, here comes another nerd rant from me. Um, Sailor Moon isn't exactly the best role model. I'm sure you all know this. She dates a guy who is older than herself, not by much, but when you're 14 and you're dating a guy who's almost college age, you know, I shouldn't be speaking though because, I'm dating a guy who is 4.5 years older than me, but since I'm over 20, it's not as big of a problem. Anyway, so she does that. She sneaks out at night all the time because she's fighting evil. She gets really bad grades in school. She overeats. Just all this stuff. She's not a very good role model, but she is a good role model because she teaches you that, yeah, you may not be super talented or super smart or super athletic or any of that stuff. But what's important is that you believe in yourself and you don't give up ever. Don't give up on your dreams. Don't give up when you're being tasked with something that may be really difficult, because Usagi goes through all this stuff that normal people don't go through, but she does it anyway because she knows that that's important and she wants to make everyone happy. And that's a good role model because it's important to make people happy and it's important to believe in yourself. So her saying that she carries that light within her is what the whole series is about. She realizes that her strength comes from herself. And I think that's wonderful. That's why Sailor Moon is my favorite anime. It teaches the most important lesson anyone could ever learn. So, yeah. That's all I have to say about this episode. Sorry I rambled on so much, but yeah, I just really liked this episode a lot. It touched on a lot of the things that I like Sailor Moon for. The whole combining magical girl with space opera thing, and having really good lessons and really impactful scenes that can, I guess, make a statement on your life. I don't know how to word it, but you know what I mean. So anyway, join me for the next episode in which we will hopefully see Sailor Saturn awaken, but it'll probably be at like the very end of the episode and they'll save like her entire screen time for the episode after that or something. I don't know. But anyway, until next time, bye.